is called Model of Care Initiatives, but it's really even broader than that. And it's broad and it just begins to scrape the surface about some of the wonderful things. And I was thinking that the first panel we had this morning gave us really, really good foundation in why. Why are we doing this project? Why are we here today? And why are we undertaking this big project? And I know why after listening to that first panel. This panel is about how, some of the hows about how we're going to do it. So I would like to introduce to you our esteemed speakers, one of whom I haven't even shaken hands with myself. And we thought we would we'll start with kind of an overarching presentation, and then we'll kind of walk you through the process in the order that made sense to us, that a person might be encountering the system, a person with dementia. So our first speaker is going to be Olivier Constant over on the end, who said his usual speech time is an hour and a half. So today we have 12 minutes. Yeah. He's with us from Belgium, and he has a master's degree in social sciences with a specialization in medical sociology and a master's degree in film studies and visual culture. And he's going to talk about stigma and the effect of stigma on care and on healthcare. And that if we don't fix those things, we're not going to be able to get very far. Our next speaker will be Rick Fortinsky. And Rick is a professor at the University of Connecticut School of Medicine, where he's a core faculty member at the UConn Center on Aging and holds the HealthNet Inc. Endowed Chair in Geriatrics and Gerontology, and brags about 30 years of experience. In healthcare and health-related outcomes for people with dementia. Jamira Howard is our next speaker after that. Jamira works with the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Planning and Evaluation. And I can say this in one breath, in the Office of Disability, Aging, and Long-Term Care Policy. Jamira specializes in all kinds of alternative models. So she's going to talk to us about PACE, and she's going to talk to us about some of the other SNPs, D-SNPs, and some of the different ways that we serve people. And then our final speaker is Mary Middleman, and Mary is a research professor of psychiatry and rehabilitative medicine at the NYU School of Medicine, and director of the NYU Alzheimer's Disease and Related Disorders Family Support Program. And she'll tell us all about that, and that's a caregiver support program. So, Olivier, we'll start with you.
Does everybody hear me clear? Yeah, okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's been quite a journey to reach Washington, starting from Brussels with lots of surprising travel plans, but I made it with a full time of delay, and it's truly an honor also to present you today our awareness-raising work that we do in Flanders, which is the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium. What I want to do today is to invite you to look to the person behind the label dementia. I want to invite researchers, policymakers, to learn more, to look through the perspective of vulnerable people instead of looking through our own eyes. And therefore, as Ruth already suggested, I want to start with a short movie fragment, which is an animation movie, and that is called, and it's also the baseline of our campaign, Forget Dementia, Remember the Person. And we wrote the animation movie together with people with dementia and informal caregivers. So I hope the technique helps me well. Okay. I think this isn't working, so okay, thank you.
My name is Louise. I am one of the 132,000 people with dementia in Flanders. By 2060, our numbers will have doubled. I remember that well, didn't I? Dementia is not all bad, you know. My life hasn't lost all meaning. I live at home, even though some extra help might be a possible scenario, if I call my husband Gilbert again. That's the name of my first lover. 2, 3, 4 years ago, I went to the store for stuff, but suddenly I couldn't find my way home again. The cashier knows me, and luckily she took me back home. It took a while for the doctor to figure out it was dementia. It's a relief to know exactly what is going on, though. For my husband, it's not always easy to look inside my head. Sometimes I get confused. Last week we celebrated his birthday. I remembered the date. We went to the beach for the weekend. It was lovely. It's not always cloudy in my head, though. Recently, I taught my granddaughter how to cook an egg. I'm a chef, so now she knows how to poach eggs like a pro. Whenever the words are hard to find, I simply show her how it's done. Living in the moment can be beautiful. Forget dementia. Remember the person.
Thank you. Okay, we're there. Following the inspiring panel we had just before lunch with the people with dementia, I also want to bring you a story today that has as a heart and soul the voice of the experts by experience, namely the people with dementia and their loved ones. On this picture, you see Huguette. Huguette was 75 years old when I had an interview with her. And the specific thing about that long interview was that she just got her diagnosis some weeks ago. And in the meantime, while I'm talking, you can read the quote that is pictured here. And I think this quote pretty well sums up what's at stake today. Acceptance, understanding, adjusting to the pace of a person in each stage of the condition, providing a safe environment for people with dementia, and talking about dementia without taboos. And for me, the story of Huguette, also my personal experience with Alzheimer's in my family, and the many other people with dementia that I've met during the more than 7 years that I'm working for the Expertise Center, are also the vision behind the baseline of our campaign, Forget Dementia, Remember the Person. And that is a campaign with a clear starting point. Respectful communication is the basis for person-centered care and is also the starting point for a true inclusive society for people with dementia. Can I have the next slide, please? So, and that's not only what the stories of people with dementia teach us, but also what research and daily care practice teach us. As we've already heard during the panel this morning, we see a massive impact of communication on almost all medical and care challenges. For instance, we see a direct connection between stigma and timely diagnosis. In Belgium, it takes more than 2 years before people at an older age get a formal diagnosis. It takes 4.4 years before people with young onset dementia get a formal diagnosis. So that's a massive period of lost opportunities to retain quality of life. The impact of stigma on care acceptance. I mean, there's a lot of information about dementia available, but people have to find their way. And once they find their way, they have to accept what's available. And that last thing is very difficult to work on because that's more like a psychological and an emotional thing. And that's something we try to do with this campaign, like really moving forward on the care acceptance. And later on, I'm going to tell you how we try to do that with the campaign. The third challenge, I think that's something that's also a challenge in your country, advanced care planning. When I say those words, we start thinking on the last stages of the condition, at the end of life, euthanasia. advanced care planning has to start the day people get a formal diagnosis. But we see, because of the taboo, people postpone all legal and financial arrangements. There's still so much ways to move forward on this one. And the last thing, obviously, we talked about dementia-friendly communities this morning. The whole social network of informal caregivers decreases so rapidly. The only thing informal caregivers do is care, care, and care. And the first thing they give up is like all their engagements in local life, social cultural life, sport organizations. And obviously, this has a consequence that they have like the weakening of the social ties and also a weakening of their own resilience. Can I have the next slide, please? So to sum up the vision behind the campaign, what we say is that apart from a biological pathology, dementia is also a sociological reality. And we see that in the dominant vision of society, of the media, but also in the care field, there's still a negative impact on the quality of life of people with dementia and their caregivers. We see that people often are reduced to a condition and that there's a one-sided focus on the later stages of dementia. And this has two negative consequences, or two possible negative consequences. The first thing is that as a society, we almost create a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we, and especially the media, portray people like isolated, dependent, losing capacities, people start to behave like that. And I think that's a very dangerous thing to do. And the second consequence is what the American scientist Steve Sabat called excess disability. That's the additional burden people get on top of the formal diagnosis dementia. So, and what I want to say today is I want to raise a call to action also for research for a more holistic approach. Let's try to look at the person as a whole when we talk about identity. Let's try to look on what people can still do. People with dementia retain a rich emotional life. People with dementia retain a need for contact in all stages of the condition. And the last thing, and that's why I underlined it, people still cherish dreams. And that's so important to point out. When we talk about care and policy for people with dementia, we tend to look backwards, which is logical because most people with dementia get diagnosed at an older age. But by always rewinding the movie, we forget that people still have the ability to learn. People still have the ability to discover new things. People still cherish small and bigger dreams. And I think that's also important for researchers and policymakers to keep in mind. So, and there's a picture here. Can you just go back to the slide where we were? Yeah, one slide back, thank you. Okay. So I think it's time to rephrase the quotes of the French philosopher René Descartes. I think this sums it up pretty well. We are much more than our brain. If we reduce people to their cognitive capacities, I think we gradually take away the identity of a person with dementia. And thank you. And what we want to say with this campaign is don't look too far. The best medicines for persons with dementia don't come from a pill box. We have them in our own hands. Attention, empathy, a listening ear, and time. And in the end, the only thing that people with dementia want is that they are valued and that they are understood. And that is exactly what we try to do in Flanders with our taboo-breaking campaign, Forget Dementia, Remember the Person. Now we can go to the next slide. Thank you. And to be clear, we're not doing that starting from a well-intended kind of pity with people with dementia. We're starting from a sincere compassion with people with dementia, and we're starting from a firm belief in their everlasting capacities in all stages of the condition. So, and as the Flanders Centers of Expertise on Dementia and the official partner organization of the Flemish government in Belgium, we coordinate this campaign together with our partners and experts in the field. And we have a clear ambition: give more power to the people, personal experiences are the heart and soul of this movement. And through this grassroots strategy, and that's important, we also want to break down the walls between formal and informal care and the rest of society. We also want to bridge gaps between generations, and we want to urge for respectful communication and smash stereotypes. And obviously, we want to sustain and maximize the existing efforts in the field. Can I have the next slide, please? I don't know how's your Dutch, but here you see a screenshot of the original website of the campaign. So the basis of the campaign is a dynamic web platform, but the good news is we're also pretty active on social media like Twitter, Facebook and YouTube, where we have quite some campaign tools also available in English for the international audience. So, and to conclude this chapter of the campaign, I'm going to briefly present some communication tools that we've developed. And my aim is also to give you some additional inspiration with these tools for vision when we talk about dementia research. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so one thing we did is we've released a brand new series of cartoons that translates the campaign baseline. And I think it was striking this morning during the panel that all the people told or said two words, words matter. And I'm going to conclude my presentation later on with a working group of people with dementia we've set up. And that was also the first thing they said when we asked them, what's important for you? Respectful language. So it's not just about words. Language has a massive impact on the quality of life of people with dementia. And I think that's also important to keep in mind when you conduct dementia research. Here on your right, you see a cartoon that stresses the importance of inclusion of people with dementia. Dementia is already difficult enough. So why don't we start to find more joy in the lives of people with dementia or give them more joy in their lives? Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, this is again in Dutch. I'm not going to translate everything, but here on your right you see a picture of a series of posters that we've developed together with people with young onset dementia of a daycare center, which is located near our offices in Antwerp City, in Belgium. And on these posters we ask people with dementia and informal caregivers to write down what's important for them. And then we've developed small artworks with the photographs, which you can see pictured here. On the left side for you, you see an example of a series of graphic novel stories we've developed. And with this series, we have an important message to give when we talk about stigma, when we talk about advocacy. Mostly we see people who can still put it into words, who are still physically active, who have got a recent diagnosis. No, when we talk about breaking down the stigma, we have to involve people in all stages of the condition. And communication is much more than verbal communication. And this was really written down quite well by a person with dementia, and it's pictured here below. I'm going to translate it for you. And I think that sums also pretty well what the panel said earlier today. The person wrote me, learn to read the language of people with dementia. Try, listen, search, feel, find, look. Listen to me, also when words disappear. Can I have the next slide, please? So, in the last example of the communication tools, you can see here tons of pictures. We have created a picture database which policymakers, researchers, journalists can order for free pictures of. But the beating heart of our campaign are the personal stories. That's where I started also this short talk. And can I have the next slide, please? And I think it's important when we talk about these personal stories. You see our 3 central ideas pictured here. I think this could also be a good compass for future dementia research. We have to focus more on what people with dementia can still contribute to society. We really have to move forward on the guidance toward the tailored care for people with dementia. And on the care acceptance. And we really have to move forward also in research, but also in the dementia strategies that are developed across the globe on how we can include them as long as possible. I mean, in lots of countries, it is the aim to keep people with dementia longer at home. But I'm not a big fan of living longer at home as you live isolated, as you are not integrated in society. So, and all these personal testimonies that we've released like almost 60 videos, have one thing in common: the massive impact that there still is of stigma in all countries across the globe. So, and starting from 2 months ago, we also released the first testimonies with English translation. So I'm happy to invite you to look at our YouTube channel where you can find all the videos, because I don't have that much time to show you videos, but I'm happy to invite you to watch our YouTube channel. So can I have the next slide, please? I'm going to conclude this talk with an initiative that for us as a country was really pioneering. That was the start of the first ever working group of people with dementia. And if I have to name, no problem. Oh, really? Oh. If I have to name one person that learned me the most during my work at the Expertise Center, it are all the people with dementia and the caregivers. I'm gonna skip a little bit of my text here because I'm running out of time. But I just want to stress the importance of initiatives like this in the field, because we not only want to reach out more proactively towards the media, but we also want to include people with dementia fully in research, in policy work, and in product development of assistive technology and stuff like that. So, and after 5 intensive meetings with the working group, we shot a short introduction movie, and I don't know if we have still time to show it, but I would appreciate it if we could have shown it. Okay. Good, so we'll show it maybe, and otherwise you can send the link or whatever. So, okay, I'm gonna skip this part because it was a movie that had to talk for itself. I just wanna end with this. I hope that this short talk gave you an additional dose of energy and inspiration to build further on true inclusion of people with dementia, and to give them the place they really deserve. And that's not in the margin of society, but at the center of a warm and understanding society. And I also hope that our campaign baseline, Forget Dementia, Remember the Person, may inspire each one of you in research, in policy work, because I'm convinced that if we focus on what people with dementia can still do, their dementia will disappear behind their talents, and not the other way around. Thank you very much.
Hey, Rick's up next. He's going to talk about a toolkit that